The yogurt stain on my blouse was still wet when Marcus handed me his nephew's diaper bag. "You're so good with kids," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Trevor adores you. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." I looked down at the 3-year-old clinging to my leg, then back at Marcus, who was checking his reflection in the hallway mirror for the 3rd time. He'd changed shirts twice already. "For a work dinner, your sister couldn't find anyone else?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Emergency shift at the hospital. You know how it is." He smoothed down his collar, the expensive one I'd bought him for his birthday. "I'll be back by 10, 11 at the latest." Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for being part of this incredible journey. If you're enjoying these stories of empowerment, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps us build this amazing community. "Let's dive in." Trevor tugged at my hand. "Miss Cassie, can we have pizza?" "Sure, buddy." I watched Marcus spray cologne, my cologne that I'd specifically bought for special occasions. "Work dinner, you said?" "Yeah, with the regional manager. Could be a promotion." He grabbed his keys, the ones to my apartment, the apartment I'd been paying for alone since he temporarily moved in 18 months ago. "Don't wait up." The door clicked shut behind him, and I stood there in my stained blouse, holding the hand of someone else's child, in my own apartment that somehow didn't feel like mine anymore. Trevor looked up at me with big brown eyes, completely unaware that his presence tonight was about to change everything. I'd seen the text messages 3 weeks ago. Not because I was snooping, I want to be clear about that. His phone had lit up on my kitchen counter while he was in the shower, and her name had been right there. "Can't wait for tonight. Wear that blue shirt I like, Valerie." His new colleague from the marketing department. The one he'd mentioned exactly once in passing, so casually I almost missed it. The one whose social media I'd found easily enough, full of photos from the same restaurants Marcus claimed were client meetings. The same restaurants where he'd taken me in the early days, before I became the convenient girlfriend, the one who paid rent and cooked dinners and apparently provided free childcare. I'd spent 3 weeks planning. 3 weeks of careful documentation, quiet phone calls, and strategic preparation. 3 weeks of pretending I didn't know, of smiling through his transparent lies, of playing the role of the trusting girlfriend while building my exit strategy. Tonight was simply the final step. "Pizza," Trevor announced, bouncing on my couch, the couch I'd saved 6 months to buy. "Let me make a call first, okay?" I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the contact I'd saved under property management. But it wasn't the building's management company. It was Daniel Reeves, the attorney who specialized in tenant rights and lease agreements. "Ms. Winters?" His voice was crisp, professional. "Is tonight the night?" He just left. "How long do I have?" "I can be there in 40 minutes with the paperwork. We'll need 2 witnesses for the lease modification. I've already briefed them. They're ready." I glanced at Trevor, who was now building a tower with my throw pillows. "I have a child here. His nephew, that's fine. This won't take long, and it's all perfectly legal. You're the sole leaseholder. You've given him proper notice as per New York state law, and you've documented his lack of financial contribution to the household. The landlord has already approved the removal of his name from the authorized occupants list." My heart hammered against my ribs. "And he can't contest it?" "He was never on the lease to begin with, Ms. Winters. According to your documentation, Marcus Chen moved into your apartment as a guest 18 months ago and never signed any legal agreement. You've been more than generous in allowing him to stay this long. Legally, he's been a long-term guest, not a tenant. You're simply revoking that permission." "Okay." I took a deep breath. 40 minutes. I hung up and looked around my apartment. The 1-bedroom in Chelsea that I'd fought for. Scraped together first and last month's rent plus security deposit while working 2 jobs. The apartment where I'd built a life before, Marcus had slowly infiltrated every corner of it with his presence, his belongings, his assumptions. The lease was up for renewal in 6 days. I'd been stalling, telling the landlord I needed more time to discuss with my partner. What I'd actually been doing was ensuring Marcus's name would never appear on that renewed lease. The landlord, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s named Patricia Walsh, had been surprisingly supportive. "I remember what it's like," she'd said during our private meeting last week. "Took me too long to kick out my ex-husband." "You're smarter than I was." Trevor tugged at my hand again. "Pizza now?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. In a bit, sweetie. How about we watch a movie first? I guided him to the couch, putting on an animated film I'd strategically downloaded yesterday. I needed him occupied and happy, completely unaware of the legal proceedings about to unfold in my living room. While the opening credits rolled, I moved through the apartment with purpose. I'd already packed most of Marcus's things over the past few days, slowly, carefully, a few items at a time so he wouldn't notice. They were boxed in the storage unit I'd rented 2 blocks away, paid for through the end of next month. He'd come home to find them gone eventually. But first he'd come home to find the locks changed. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder I'd titled Documentation. Inside were months of screenshots, bank statements, and photographs. Every time I'd paid rent alone. Every utility bill in my name only. Every grocery receipt, every furniture purchase, every single expense that had maintained this household while Marcus's paychecks apparently evaporated into thin air. I'd tracked his spending too, not through his accounts, but through observation. The new gaming console that had appeared in the living room. The designer sneakers. The expensive dinners he claimed were comped by clients. The concert tickets for shows he went to with the guys from work. Guys who, I'd discovered through casual social media stalking, included Valerie quite often. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus's sister, Karen. "Sorry again for the emergency. Trevor's overnight bag is in there. He might need to sleep over if my shift runs late." "Perfect." I texted back, "No problem. He's great. Take your time." Another buzz, this time from Daniel Reeves. 15 minutes out. "Is the building doorman aware?" I'd handled that yesterday. Gerald, the evening doorman, was a kind man in his 50s who'd watched me struggle in with groceries alone too many times. When I'd explained the situation, leaving out the legal details, just mentioning that I needed to have some private paperwork signed, he'd nodded knowingly. "That boyfriend of yours never helps with anything, does I?" He'd said, "I'll make sure your attorney gets up smoothly." I typed back, "Yes, all arranged." Trevor was fully absorbed in his movie, munching on the crackers I'd given him. I sat down next to him, trying to calm the adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was it. After 18 months of slowly losing myself in a relationship that had started with promise and devolved into convenient exploitation, I was taking back my space, my peace, my life. I'd met Marcus at a friend's birthday party 2 years ago. He'd been charming, funny, attentive in all the ways that made you feel special. He'd pursued me with intensity, flowers, thoughtful texts, real conversation about art and books and the kind of life we both wanted to build. 6 months in, when his roommate situation fell through, it seemed natural to offer him my couch temporarily. Temporarily became a week. A week became a month. A month became, I practically live here anyway. Why am I still paying for storage? And suddenly, without any formal discussion, Marcus lived with me. In my apartment. Using my furniture. Eating my food. Building a life that looked like partnership, but functioned like parasitism. The thing about slow encroachment is that you don't notice until you're completely surrounded. At first, he'd contributed, splitting groceries, cooking dinners, making an effort. But slowly, so slowly I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it happened, his contributions dwindled. He was between projects. The freelance work was slow this quarter. The promotion was definitely coming, just need to hold on a bit longer. Meanwhile, my graphic design business thrived. I'd gone from scraping by to comfortable, my client roster expanding steadily. I'd started making real money, enough to cover our expenses without strain. and Marcus had noticed. He'd relaxed into my success like it was a hammock designed for his comfort. The doorbell buzzed, the intercom from downstairs. "Ms. Winters? Mr. Reeves is here with 2 colleagues. Send them up, Gerald." "Thank you." Trevor didn't even look up from his movie, completely absorbed in the animated adventure on screen. I smoothed down my hair, changed into a clean blouse, and took a deep breath. My hands were shaking slightly. 3 knocks on the door, professional and measured. I opened it to find Daniel Reeves, exactly as I'd expected from our phone consultations. Mid-40s, gray suit, leather briefcase, and an expression of calm competence. Behind him stood 2 people, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a younger man in business casual attire. "Ms. Winters." Daniel extended his hand. "These are my associates, Margaret Chen and David Okonkwo. They'll serve as witnesses for the documentation." I shook their hands, hyper-aware of Trevor watching cartoons just 15 feet away. "Please come in." "Keep your voices down. There's a child present." They entered smoothly, professionally, like this was just another evening appointment. Margaret immediately smiled at Trevor, who glanced up briefly before returning to his movie. David set up a portable document scanner on my dining table, while Daniel opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency. "We'll make this quick," Daniel said softly. "First, I need you to review this notice of lease renewal. You'll see Marcus Chen's name is not included anywhere in the document." He spread papers across my table. The renewed lease agreement, prepared by Patricia Walsh and her property management company. My name alone appeared as the tenant. The rent was unchanged. The terms were standard. Everything was exactly as it should have been all along. "This is your copy," Daniel continued, producing another set of documents. "This is the formal notice of trespass prevention, which will serve on Mr. Chen when he returns. It states that as of midnight tonight, he is no longer authorized to occupy these premises and that any attempt to enter without your explicit permission constitutes criminal trespass. Isn't that extreme?" I whispered, even though I'd discussed this exact procedure with him multiple times. "It's protective," Daniel corrected gently. "You're not filing charges or seeking a restraining order. You're simply clarifying the legal boundaries of your property. He's never had a legal right to be here beyond your permission. You're withdrawing that permission, with proper notice as required by law." I nodded, scanning the documents. Everything looked exactly as we'd discussed. "The proper notice is documented here." Daniel produced a thick folder. "You sent Mr. Chen a formal email 3 weeks ago, stating that you needed to discuss the living arrangement and his financial contribution. You followed up twice. He dismissed both follow-ups. That constitutes constructive notice under New York law that the arrangement was under review." I remembered those emails. Marcus had waved them off with, "We'll talk about it later, babe, and don't worry about money stuff." He'd never imagined I was building a legal paper trail. "And his belongings?" I asked. "Already in storage, as per your planning. You're not required to store them indefinitely, but you're doing so voluntarily. That demonstrates good faith." Daniel pulled out another document. "This is an inventory of items removed, photographed, and documented. He'll receive a copy along with the storage unit location and access code. You've paid through next month, giving him plenty of time to retrieve everything." Margaret spoke up, her voice warm despite the business at hand. "I know this feels harsh, but you're doing everything correctly. You're not trying to hurt him. You're establishing clear boundaries and protecting yourself legally." "He's going to be angry," I said quietly, thinking of Marcus's temper when things didn't go his way. Not violent, never violent, but cold and cutting with words designed to make me feel small. "He'll have no legal recourse," David assured me. "We've reviewed everything 3 times. You're completely within your rights." I picked up the pen, my hand steadier now. This was right. This was necessary. This was mine to do. I signed the lease renewal. My signature alone, declaring my sole occupancy of the apartment I'd fought for, the space I'd built into a home before Marcus had treated it like a hotel where the bill was always covered. Then I signed the notice of trespass prevention, the formal document that would transform Marcus from resident to unwelcome guest the moment he received it. Margaret and David signed as witnesses. their signatures neat and official. The locksmith? I asked. Waiting downstairs in his van, Daniel confirmed. Once we leave, you'll call him. He'll change the locks, door and deadbolt. The building management is aware and has approved. You're also getting a new intercom code. Gerald has instructions not to allow Mr. Chen access to the building. What if he causes a scene? Gerald calls the police, who will have a copy of this documentation on file. You've already contacted the local precinct with a heads up, correct? I had 2 days ago. A friendly officer named Rodriguez had taken my information and assured me they'd have a note in their system. Just a domestic living arrangement being formalized, she'd said. We see it all the time. Good for you for getting ahead of it. Daniel packed up his papers, leaving me with copies in a neat folder. One more thing. I recommend you secure any documents of his that might remain, any mail, anything with his name. Not to withhold from him, but to ensure you have evidence of what was here. Photograph everything. Document everything. I have been, I assured him. They left as quietly as they'd come. 3 professionals who'd helped me reclaim my own life in under 30 minutes. Trevor barely noticed, still engrossed in his movie. I stood in my living room, and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 18 months. Then I pulled out my phone and called the locksmith. Ms. Winters? I'll be up in 5. While I waited, I did one final sweep of the apartment. Marcus's toothbrush, gone, packed away last week. His razor, gone. His collection of vintage records he'd insisted on displaying on my shelves, all carefully packed and stored. His laptop charging cable, his favorite coffee mug, his gym bag that always smelled faintly of sweat. Gone, gone, gone. What remained were my things, arranged the way I wanted them. My books, no longer pushed aside for his. My art on the walls, no longer competing with his sports memorabilia. My space, my choices, my peace. The locksmith arrived, an efficient man named Tony who didn't ask questions, just got to work. The sound of the drill seemed impossibly loud, but Trevor remained absorbed in his second movie now, happy and oblivious. 20 minutes later, I had new keys. New locks, new deadbolts, a new intercom code, a new security chain. Every point of entry secured, every boundary reinforced. You need anything else, you call, Tony said, handing me a business card. You did the right thing, whatever happened. After he left, I sat down next to Trevor, who was finally showing signs of sleepiness. It was 8:30. Marcus would be returning in an hour and a half, maybe 2, flushed with wine and whatever lies he'd told Valerie tonight. My phone buzzed. Marcus, running late. Might be midnight. You okay with Trevor? I stared at the message. The audacity of it, using his nephew as an excuse to extend his date with another woman, assuming I'd just accommodate, just accept. Just continue playing the role of the understanding girlfriend who asked no questions. I typed back, that's fine. Take your time, because I wanted him to take his time. I wanted him out as long as possible. I wanted him to feel secure in his deception, comfortable in his assumption that I was home babysitting, none the wiser, ready to welcome him back with no questions asked. I wanted him completely unprepared for what came next. Trevor yawned, rubbing his eyes. Miss Cassie, I'm sleepy. Let's get you ready for bed, buddy. I'd prepared the pull-out couch earlier, anticipating that his mother's shift might run long. I helped him brush his teeth, changed him into his pajamas, and tucked him in with his favorite stuffed dinosaur. You're nice, he said drowsily. Uncle Marcus is lucky. My heart squeezed. You're a sweet kid, Trevor. Go to sleep now. He was out in minutes, his breathing deep and even. I dimmed the lights, leaving just a small lamp on in case he woke up disoriented. Then I returned to my dining table and opened my laptop. I had work to do, a client presentation due next week that I'd been putting off. But tonight, in my reclaimed space with my new locks and my clear boundaries, the work flowed easily. The creative blocks that had been plaguing me for months seemed to dissolve. It was amazing how much mental energy I'd been spending on Marcus, tracking his moods, managing his disappointments, carrying the weight of his stagnant career while building my own, pretending not to notice the growing distance between us, the way he looked through me rather than at me anymore. At 10:15, my phone buzzed again. Marcus, probably closer to 1. Sorry, babe. This guy is a talker. 1 a.m. The restaurants would be closed by then. They were at her place or a bar, or somewhere he felt comfortable extending his lie into the early morning hours. I didn't respond. Let him wonder. At 11, Karen texted, "Shift is definitely running late." Okay, if Trevor stays over, I'll get him first thing tomorrow. Of course. He's sleeping peacefully. Take care of yourself. At midnight, I signed the lease renewal officially on the property management portal, uploading the signed documents. An automated confirmation email arrived immediately, followed by a personal message from Patricia. Congratulations on your renewal, Cassie. Proud of you. At 12:30, I finished my client presentation, saving it with a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in months. I poured myself a glass of wine, the expensive bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. This qualified. At 1:15, my phone rang. Marcus. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello? Hey, babe? His voice was slightly slurred, happy. Just leaving now. Be home in 20. Home. He called my apartment home like it was a given, like he'd earned that word through contribution and partnership rather than assumption and convenience. Okay, I said simply. You sound weird. Everything okay? Everything's fine. Drive safe. I hung up. 20 minutes. I had 20 minutes before Marcus would arrive at the building, press the old intercom code that no longer worked, and begin to realize that something was very, very different. I checked on Trevor one more time, still sleeping soundly, peaceful and innocent. Then I positioned myself on my couch with my laptop, opening a document I'd prepared yesterday. It was titled To Marcus and contained everything I needed to say, printed and waiting in an envelope on my counter. But I wouldn't give him the envelope tonight. Tonight, he would simply find himself locked out. Tomorrow, after he'd spent the night wherever he could find to stay, after he'd had time to panic and realize the severity of the situation, I would meet him in a public place, a coffee shop maybe, somewhere neutral with witnesses, and I would hand him the envelope containing the letter, the storage unit information, and the truth he'd been too self-absorbed to see coming. My phone buzzed. Gerald, the doorman. Ms. Winters, your boyfriend is here. He's asking why his code doesn't work. My heart hammered. Please tell him the codes were changed as part of a building-wide security update. I'm unavailable to come down right now. Understood. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. Marcus again. I sent it to voicemail text message. Babe, I can't get in. Buzzer's not working. Can you come down? I didn't respond. Another call. Voicemail. Text. Cassie? What's going on? Let me in. I sipped my wine, watching the messages pile up, each one growing more agitated. Text. This isn't funny. It's almost 2 a.m. and I'm tired. Just buzz me in. Text. Cassie. Text. Fine. I'm calling the building manager. Good luck with that, I thought. Patricia Walsh was asleep by 9 p.m. every night and had given explicit instructions that Marcus was not to be given access under any circumstances. My phone rang again. This time I answered. What the hell is going on? Marcus's voice was sharp now, angry, the charm completely stripped away. You're no longer authorized to access this building or this apartment, I said calmly. Tomorrow we can meet to discuss the details. For tonight, I suggest you find somewhere else to stay, Lind. Then, what? You heard me, Marcus. This is my home. You can't just lock me out. It's my apartment. It always has been. And yes, I can. I have legal documentation confirming my right to do so. We can discuss this tomorrow when you're sober. I'm not drunk, and you're being insane. What about my stuff? In storage. You'll get all the information tomorrow. Cassie. His voice shifted, trying for persuasive, almost pleading. Baby, whatever I did, we can talk about it. Just let me in. It's cold out here. It's 65 degrees, I said. You'll survive. Good night, Marcus. I hung up. He called back immediately. I silenced my phone and placed it face down on the coffee table. For the next 30 minutes, my phone screen lit up repeatedly with calls and texts, each one more desperate, then angry, then desperate again. I didn't read them. I didn't respond. I simply sat on my couch in my apartment with my new locks and my sleeping house guest and my reclaimed peace. At 2:30 a.m., the messages stopped. At 3, I checked my phone. The last text simply said, "We'll see what a lawyer has to say about this." I almost laughed. Let him get a lawyer. Let him waste his money, or more likely, try to get one to take his case pro bono once they heard the actual facts. I had Daniel Reeves, documentation, witnesses, and the law on my side. Marcus had assumptions, audacity, and 18 months of freeloading behavior that would look worse and worse under any kind of legal scrutiny. I finished my wine, checked on Trevor one last time, and went to my bedroom. My bedroom, where I'd been sleeping alone more often than not for the past 6 months while Marcus claimed the couch for his late-night gaming sessions that I now understood were probably late-night texting sessions with Valerie. Lay down in my bed, in my apartment, behind my new locks, and felt something I hadn't felt in over a year. Safe, secure, certain that when I woke up in the morning, I would be exactly where I wanted to be, with exactly the life I was choosing, and Marcus. Marcus would be facing the consequences of taking someone's kindness for weakness, their home for a crash pad, their love for a convenience. Tomorrow, I would tell him everything. Tomorrow, I would hand him the evidence of his betrayal, the inventory of his belongings, the truth about what I'd known, and for how long. Tomorrow, I would watch him realize that the unemployable, understanding, convenient girlfriend he'd been using had actually been 3 steps ahead the entire time, planning her exit with the precision of someone who'd finally learned to value herself more than a relationship that had long since rotted from the inside. But tonight, I just slept peacefully, with new locks on my door and Trevor's gentle snoring from the living room, and the knowledge that I'd finally taken back what was mine. The foundation is laid. The trap is sprung, and Cassie has reclaimed her space. But Marcus won't accept defeat easily, and tomorrow brings a confrontation that will reveal just how deep the deception and the planning truly went. The real revelations are just beginning. Morning sunlight filtered through my bedroom curtains, and for the first time in months, I woke up without that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. No wondering where Marcus really was. No pretending I didn't notice the lies. Just peace. Trevor's voice drifted from the living room. He was talking to himself, playing with his dinosaur. I checked my phone. 7:30 a.m. 43 missed calls from Marcus throughout the night. 67 text messages. I scrolled through them, watching the progression from angry to manipulative to desperate to threatening and back to pleading. The final message, sent at 5:42 a.m. I know you're upset about something. When you're ready to be reasonable, call me. I'm staying at Dave's. Dave, his coworker? Not Valerie, interestingly. That was telling. I got up, pulled on my robe, and went to check on Trevor. He was building a tower with my books, completely content. Good morning, buddy. Hungry? Pancakes? His eyes lit up. Pancakes it is. While I cooked, my phone rang. Karen, Marcus's sister. Cassie, I'm so sorry about last night. Shift from hell. I'm on my way to get Trevor now. Should be there in 20 minutes. No rush. We're making pancakes. You're a lifesaver. Marcus texted me at 3 a.m. saying something about being locked out. I told him not to bother me during my shift. Everything okay? I hesitated. We'll talk when you get here. 20 minutes later, Karen arrived, looking exhausted in her scrubs. Trevor ran to her with syrup-sticky hands, chattering about the movies and the pancakes. She hugged him, then looked at me with concern. What happened with Marcus? I handed her a cup of coffee. Your brother and I are no longer together. He no longer lives here. I needed to make that change last night, and I apologize that Trevor was here for it, but he didn't see or hear anything upsetting. Karen's eyes widened. Oh my God. Cassie, I had no idea things were that bad. Did he? Was He wasn't abusive, if that's what you're asking. But he was dishonest, and he was using me. I finally had enough. She sat down heavily on my couch. I knew he wasn't contributing financially. Mom kept asking me about it, saying it wasn't right. But Marcus always said you two had an arrangement, that you made more money and didn't mind covering things. I minded, I said quietly. I minded a lot. But it wasn't just the money, Karen. He was cheating on me. Her face went pale. No, are you sure? I pulled out my phone and showed her a few of the screenshots I'd saved. Not the intimate messages, just enough to make the point clear. Marcus and Valerie at restaurants. Marcus and Valerie at a concert. Text messages about meeting up, about missing each other, about keeping things quiet. That bastard, Karen whispered. Cassie, I'm so sorry. If I'd known, it's not your fault. You're not responsible for your brother's choices. I took the phone back. I'm telling you because I don't want this to be weird between us. You've always been kind to me, and Trevor is a sweet kid. But Marcus and I are done, and he's going to have his version of events. I wanted you to know the truth. Karen stood up and hugged me, tight and fierce. You're too good for him. You always were. And for what it's worth, I hope you find someone who deserves you. After they left, I showered and dressed carefully. Professional but comfortable. Dark jeans, a blazer, simple jewelry. I was meeting Marcus at 10 a.m. at Brewster's, a busy coffee shop 3 blocks away. Public, crowded, safe. I'd texted him at 8. Meet me at Brewster's at 10. Come alone. We'll talk. His response was immediate. Finally. I'll be there. I arrived 15 minutes early, claiming a table near the back with a clear view of the entrance. I ordered a latte and set up my materials. The envelope containing the letter, the storage unit information, and copies of the legal documentation. My phone was fully charged, recording app ready if needed. Marcus walked in at exactly 10, looking haggard. He'd clearly worn yesterday's clothes to sleep, and his hair was uncombed. He spotted me and made his way over, his expression a mixture of relief and frustration. Thank God, he said, sitting down heavily. Cassie, what the hell was last night about? You completely overreacted. I need you to listen, I interrupted, keeping my voice calm and level. Don't interrupt. Just listen. Can you do that? He blinked, seemingly thrown by my tone. Okay, but Marcus, just listen. He closed his mouth, jaw tight. I slid the envelope across the table. This contains several things. First, a letter explaining why our relationship is over. Second, the location and access information for the storage unit containing all of your belongings. Third, legal documentation confirming that you are no longer authorized to enter my apartment or the building. Fourth, evidence of your affair with Valerie Chen from marketing. His face went white. I saw the messages 3 weeks ago. I've been tracking your dates, your lies, your whereabouts. Last night, while you were taking her to Marino's, the same restaurant where you proposed we get serious 2 years ago, I had an attorney remove you from my apartment legally and permanently. You can't do that. I live there. You were a guest in my apartment. You never paid rent. You never signed a lease. You contributed nothing financially for 18 months while I covered every expense. Legally, you have no claim to that space. My attorney confirmed it. The building management confirmed it. The police have been notified. It's done, Marcus. He stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. This is insane. You're being crazy. So I was having dinner with a coworker. Don't. My voice was sharp enough to cut. Don't insult my intelligence by lying to my face right now. I know everything. The texts, the hotels, the weekend you claimed you were visiting your college roommate but were actually at her place in Brooklyn. I know, Marcus. All of it. His mouth opened and closed. Then something shifted in his expression. The charm dropped away, revealing something colder underneath. Fine. Yes, I was seeing Valerie. Are you happy now? You wanted me to admit it? I wanted you to be honest, just once. But that's not really your strength, is it? He leaned back, crossing his arms. You know what your problem is, Cassie? You're controlling. You keep track of everything. You make everything about money. You never just let things flow naturally. I kept track of things because I was the only one responsible for anything. I paid attention to money because you certainly didn't. And nothing flowed naturally, Marcus. I carried everything while you coasted on my effort and called it a relationship. I was building my career. You knew I was between opportunities. For 18 months? You were between opportunities for a year and a half while living rent-free in my apartment, eating my food, using my resources, and sleeping with someone else. That's not building a career. That's being a parasite. His face flushed red. How dare you? How dare I? I leaned forward. How dare you? You used me, Marcus. You used my home, my money, my trust, my love. You took everything I offered and treated it like you were entitled to it. Like I was lucky you were there at all. You were lucky. Do you know how many guys would put up with your need to control everything? Your schedules, your systems, your constant. My need to control everything kept you housed and fed while you contributed nothing. My voice rose slightly, then I controlled it, remembering we were in public. And you didn't put up with anything, Marcus. You exploited everything. He was quiet for a moment, jaw working. Then what about my stuff? You can't just take my belongings. I didn't take anything. I carefully packed and stored everything at my own expense. The storage unit is paid through the end of next month. All your belongings are there, inventoried and photographed. The information is in that envelope. And then what? You expect me to just disappear? I expect you to collect your things and move on with your life. Preferably with Valerie, since you've been investing so much time in that relationship. He laughed bitterly. Valerie? She's not interested in anything serious. She was just available. Wow. I sat back. So you risked our entire relationship for someone who was just available? That's somehow worse, Marcus. Our relationship was already dead, Cassie. You were just too controlling to notice. Everything had to be your way. Your apartment, your rules, your schedule. I felt like I was living in a museum where I couldn't touch anything. You lived in my space rent-free and complained about the accommodations. Do you hear yourself? I would have contributed if you'd ever given me the chance. But you always had to be in charge, always had to pay for everything, always had to prove you didn't need me. I didn't need you. The words came out sharper than I intended. Several people glanced over. I lowered my voice. I didn't need you, Marcus. I wanted you. There's a difference. I wanted a partner, someone who showed up, who contributed, who cared about building something together. But you didn't want that. You wanted someone to take care of you while you did whatever you wanted. That's not true. It is true. And deep down you know it. You moved into my apartment temporarily and never left. You stopped contributing financially after 3 months. You stopped contributing emotionally after 6. By the end, you were barely even pretending to be present in our relationship. You were just there, using my space like a hotel. He was quiet, staring at the table. Last night, I continued. When you handed me Trevor's diaper bag and left for your work dinner, you know what I felt? Relief. Relief that you were gone. Relief that I had my space to myself. Relief that I didn't have to pretend anymore. That's when I knew for certain that I was making the right choice. So what? You just planned this whole thing? Got a lawyer, changed the locks, packed my stuff, all without saying a word to me? I tried talking to you, Marcus. 3 weeks ago, I sent you an email asking to discuss our living arrangement and your financial contribution. You dismissed it. I followed up twice. You said later both times. You didn't want to talk. You wanted to avoid the conversation because you knew where it would lead. You could have tried harder. No. I shook my head firmly. I could not have tried harder. I tried for 18 months. I tried by covering your expenses. I tried by not complaining when you stopped contributing. I tried by pretending not to notice that you were pulling away. I tried by being understanding, patient, supportive. I tried until I had nothing left to give. The failure here isn't my effort, Marcus. It's your character. He flinched at that. You want to know the saddest part? I continued. When we first met, I really believed you were different. You seemed kind, genuine, interested in building something real. I thought maybe I'd finally found someone who saw me as a partner, not a paycheck or a convenience. But you were just better at hiding it than the others. That's not fair. I did care about you. If you cared about me, you wouldn't have spent the last 6 months sleeping with someone else. If you cared about me, you wouldn't have treated my home like your personal crash pad. If you cared about me, Marcus, you would have shown up, just once. You would have contributed something, anything, beyond excuses and broken promises. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, so that's it? 2 years together and you just throw me out? You threw yourself out the moment you started lying to me. I just made it official. Valerie's going to love hearing about this. She always said you seemed controlling. Feel free to tell her whatever makes you feel better about yourself. Tell her I was controlling, demanding, impossible to please. Tell her I threw you out for no reason. Tell her whatever story helps you sleep at night. But you and I both know the truth. He stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're going to regret this, Cassie. You're going to realize you made a huge mistake, and by then it'll be too late. I won't. But even if I did, I wouldn't come back. Because I finally learned something important. Being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel alone anyway. He grabbed the envelope, his hand shaking slightly. I want everything inventoried when I get to that storage unit. If anything's missing, everything's there. Documented with photographs. You'll see. I stood up too, gathering my things. Goodbye, Marcus. I genuinely hope you figure out how to be a better person. For your sake, not mine. Go to hell, Cassie. I've been there. It looked a lot like our relationship for the past year. I'm leaving now. I walked out of Brewster's without looking back, my heart pounding but my steps steady. Behind me, I heard him slam his hand on the table, heard his frustrated curse. But I kept walking, 3 blocks home. Up the elevator. New intercom code, new keys, new locks. Inside my apartment, I closed the door and leaned against it, breathing deeply. Then I looked around, really looked at my space. My furniture arranged exactly how I wanted it. My art on the walls, my books on the shelves. My life reclaimed. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel Reeves. How did it go? I typed back, it's done. He knows everything. Thank you for your help. You're welcome. If he contacts you again or causes any problems, let me know immediately. Otherwise, consider this case closed. Another text, this one from Karen. Trevor told me you gave him pancakes with chocolate chips and syrup. He's your biggest fan. Also, I talked to Mom. She wants you to know you're still invited to family dinners. Marcus is officially uninvited until further notice. I smiled, unexpected tears pricking my eyes. I texted back, thank you. That means more than you know. Over the next few days, Marcus tried various tactics. Angry texts about what a mistake I was making. Manipulative messages about how much he missed me. Practical texts about items he claimed were missing from storage. They weren't. I had photographic evidence of everything. Finally, a long email detailing how I'd wasted 2 years of his life and how he was better off without someone so cold and calculating. I read it once, then deleted it. His words couldn't touch me anymore. I changed my relationship status on social media to single. I blocked Marcus on everything. I updated my emergency contacts, removing his name from every list. I met with Patricia Walsh and officially signed my lease renewal, her office filled with plants and warm sunlight. How are you doing? She asked, genuine concern in her eyes. Better than I expected, I admitted. It's strange having my space back. Quiet. But good quiet, you know. I do know. It takes time to adjust to peace when you've been living in chaos. Give yourself grace. 2 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. This is Valerie. I don't know what you told Marcus, but he's been staying with me and it's been a nightmare. He's moody, entitled, and expects me to pay for everything. I thought you should know he was complaining about you constantly, calling you controlling. I'm starting to see why you kicked him out. Anyway, we're done. Good luck to whoever's next. I stared at the message for a long moment, then replied, Thank you for telling me. I hope you find someone who treats you better. We both deserve that. She sent back a thumbs-up emoji. A month after the lockout, I was working on a client presentation when my doorbell rang. I checked the intercom. Karen with Trevor. Surprise visit, okay? She asked when I let them up. Always. Trevor ran in with a drawing. I made this for you. It's a dinosaur eating pancakes. I hung it on my refrigerator with pride while Karen settled on my couch with coffee. Marcus moved back with our parents, she said. Mom's making him get a job and pay rent. He's miserable. Good. He asked about you. Wanted to know if you were seeing anyone? That's none of his business. That's exactly what I told him. Karen smiled. Mom wants you to come to dinner Sunday. She says Marcus can stay in his room if he doesn't like it. I'd love that. After they left, I stood in my apartment, looking at Trevor's drawing on the fridge, at my books on the shelves, at my life spreading out before me. I thought about Marcus, probably in his childhood bedroom, finally facing consequences for the first time in years. I thought about the woman I'd been 18 months ago, so eager to help, so willing to overlook red flags, so desperate to make a relationship work that I'd nearly lost myself in the process. And I thought about the woman I was now, stronger, clearer, unafraid to set boundaries and enforce them. My phone buzzed with a notification, a new client inquiry, a big project with a generous budget. I opened my laptop and started drafting a response, the words flowing easily in the peaceful quiet of my own space. That evening, I cooked dinner for one, poured a glass of wine, and sat on my couch, in my apartment, behind my locks, and watched the sunset through my windows. No one was coming home to disrupt my peace. No one was using my space while giving nothing back. No one was lying to me or taking me for granted or treating my kindness as weakness. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. I was free, and as I sat there in the golden evening light, I realized something profound. I'd spent 2 years trying to build a home with Marcus, never understanding that he was the very thing preventing me from feeling at home in my own space. Now, finally, I was home. Really, truly home. My phone buzzed one last time. Daniel Reeves. Just following up. Any issues with the ex? I smiled and typed back. None whatsoever. The case is officially closed. I set my phone aside, picked up my wine and toasted to the empty room, to new beginnings, to hard lessons learned, to the strength it takes to choose yourself when everyone expects you to choose comfort. Marcus had taught me something valuable, even if he'd never intended to. The difference between being accommodating and being a doormat, between being generous and being used, between loving someone and losing yourself. I'd paid a high price for that lesson, 18 months of my life, countless dollars, immeasurable emotional energy, but I'd learned it thoroughly, completely, in a way I'd never forget. And now, in my apartment with my new locks and my reclaimed peace, I was ready to move forward, not bitter, not broken, but clear-eyed and certain about what I deserved. I deserved partnership, not parasitism. I deserved honesty, not manipulation. I deserved someone who showed up, who contributed, who saw my kindness as a gift rather than an entitlement. And if I never found that person, well, I'd learned something else too. I was perfectly capable of being happy alone. The sunset deepened, painting my walls in shades of amber and rose. Somewhere across the city, Marcus was probably complaining to his parents or his friends or whoever would listen about how unreasonable I'd been, how he'd been wronged, how he deserved better. Let him. I knew the truth, and more importantly, I knew my worth. I finished my wine, rinsed the glass, and went to bed early, in my bedroom, in my apartment, in my life, and slept the deep, dreamless sleep of someone who'd finally stopped carrying weight that was never theirs to bear. Tomorrow, I'd wake up and build something new. But tonight, I simply rested in the peace of boundaries kept and lessons learned, and that was more than enough. The end sometimes. The bravest thing you can do is reclaim your own space. Sometimes strength looks like new locks on old doors. Sometimes freedom is simply knowing when to stop accommodating and start protecting yourself. Cassie learned all of this the hard way, but she learned it completely. And in the end, she didn't just remove a man from her apartment. She removed the version of herself that had been willing to disappear for someone else's comfort. That was the real victory. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.